Okay, I want to welcome everyone today. Today, our Mississauga Economic Development Office, in partnership with Build a Dream, is concluding our Women in Mississauga Manufacturing Lunch and Learn session. We will be discussing tangible tools to help with retention of female employees in the advanced manufacturing workplace. This session focuses on how to help women progress through your company and through meaningful and intentional strategy. This session will provide clear examples of methods that have led to an increase in women in the manufacturing sector. This session will include tools and resources to help you implement a new and better approach to your recruitment, attraction, retention, and advancement plans. Our session will feature Noor Hakim Fawaz, founder and CEO of Build a Dream, along with Rebecca Shenya, who is working as a mechanic at Hiram Walker & Sons in Windsor and is a Red Seal machinist. We also have Kim Tierra, President and CEO of Acetronic, a Mississauga manufacturer of industrial controls, and Simi Tierra, leader of change management and director of sales at Acetronic Industrial Controls, Inc. My name is Walter Garrison, and I am the Advanced Manufacturing Business Integrator for the City of Mississauga, working out of our Mississauga Economic Development Office. I work with manufacturing companies in the aerospace, automotive, food and beverage, clean technologies, and medical device sectors, as well as with our specialty manufacturers. We have many world-class and globally leading manufacturers in Mississauga, and I, along with my economic development colleagues, assist them in talent and workforce development, site selection, expansion and retention, business-to-business connections, continuous improvement, supply chains, and export market development, amongst our other services. Our Mississauga EDO advocates on behalf of our manufacturers to other levels of government and provides connections to those agencies that can assist them with their growth opportunities and challenges. Before we proceed, I want to inform all attendees about a few key points regarding today's session. Audio is available for speakers and panelists only. The camera display is available for speakers and panelists only. This session is being recorded and will be available after today's webinar. For all attendees today, please use the chat area to offer comments and ask questions. Please address these to all panelists. Today's presentations, resources, and a feedback survey will be emailed to attendees following today's session. We acknowledge the lands which constitute the present-day City of Mississauga as being part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and Wyandot nations. We recognize these people and their ancestors as peoples who inhabited these lands since time immemorial. The City of Mississauga is home to many global Indigenous peoples. I also wanted to make all attendees today aware of our upcoming Design Thinking workshop on the attraction, retention, and advancement of women in your manufacturing organization. This will occur in the first quarter of 2021, and we're limiting this to 5 Mississauga manufacturing companies only. This is a day-long workshop where Build a Dream and our Mississauga Economic Development Office will be working with you to provide you with strategies and tactics to increase the number of women applying for open employment positions within your organization, as well as methods to retain and advance them once hired. Please contact me if you are interested in registering for this free workshop. Back in March of 2020, the before times as we like to call them, our Mississauga Economic Development Office hosted Building Skilled Talent Together, an event where we brought together our Mississauga manufacturers, colleges, universities, secondary schools, government agencies, and stakeholder groups to discuss and develop solutions to the skilled talent shortage currently facing the advanced manufacturing sector in Mississauga. While this is a global challenge, our Mississauga EDO was and is focused on finding solutions to having more people trained and employed in the occupations within manufacturing that require STEM skills. One of the organizations we worked with at the event was Build a Dream, who ran one of the event workshops. This is where I first met Noor. Noor Hakim Fawaz is the founder and CEO of Build a Dream, which delivers specialized programs to encourage and empower women students to explore careers where women are underrepresented, while also working to create a gender-balanced workforce and change global perspectives on women's contributions to society. Noor is a dynamic person who is really committed to the mission of our organization, Build a Dream. In the spring of 2021, our Mississauga Economic Development Office, in conjunction with Build a Dream, held 2 meetings with women in management and human resource positions representing a number of Mississauga's leading manufacturers. From these meetings, Mississauga, EDO, and Build a Dream have developed this program intended to have more women participate, stay, and advance in the Mississauga advanced manufacturing workforce. These lunch and learn sessions on recruitment and attraction, retention, and advancement of women in the advanced manufacturing workforce is a result of our earlier Mississauga EDO events and is part of Mississauga EDO diversity and inclusion initiatives. We have a number of objectives for our 3 lunch and learn sessions. We want to encourage more women to consider a career in advanced manufacturing with one of our many excellent companies in Mississauga. We want to assist you attending this webinar today in your recruitment and attraction of women into available employment positions in your organization, and we want to help you retain the women that you hire within your organization. The pandemic has led to a number of significant and impactful challenges for manufacturers globally. A number of women have left positions in the industry as they have been the primary child care provider. While manufacturing companies have been operating during COVID, many have done so at a reduced capacity. Now that a number of sectors are ramping up their production levels and volumes, will the workforce that experienced layoffs or left their roles by choice come back to their positions? Retention is a real challenge, and I hear this from a number of companies that I work with and assist. For the women that have left the advanced manufacturing workforce during the pandemic, the challenge is for companies to determine how to attract and recruit them again. I would now like to introduce Noor and our speakers. Noor Hakim Fawaz is the founder and CEO of Build a Dream and will be leading today's session. Noor wants to change global perspectives on women's contribution to society. Inspired by her mother's perseverance to excel in a male-dominated field, Noor dug deep into the why behind the lack of women in skilled trades. She realized that the barriers keeping women out of these rewarding careers were common to other male-dominated paths and created a nonprofit to encourage and empower young women to explore careers they may never have considered. Noor's challenge to listeners is that one must first address internal preconceptions before being capable of making significant strides that transform our work and world. A brilliant connector and facilitator, audiences are drawn to her candor and unique perspective from an extensive career in workforce development and her lived experiences as a woman of color. She shares energetic stories of what leaders are doing right now and offers real world examples of how embracing diverse workplaces accelerates success. Noor earned her Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Windsor and expanded Build a Dream across Canada while completing her MBA, raising children and earning many awards and accolades. She spends each day following her passion, creating equity not just in the workplace, but in all of the spaces around us. I would also like to introduce our speakers today. Rebecca Shenya is a red steel machinist and a mechanic at Hiram Walkers & Sons in Windsor, Ontario. Kim Tierra has been instrumental in positioning Ace-Tronic Industrial Controls, Inc. as the leader in the plastics market. She has spent the last 25 years establishing a name for herself as the best source for plastic processing products, repair and calibration, culminating in the 2008 purchase of Ace-Tronic, a company founded by her father, Harb Mashiana, in 1983. As president and CEO of Ace-Tronic, getting things done and driving results through collaboration, partnerships, and relationships is what Kim is about. She radiates an enthusiastic and sincere passion to service her clients in all facets of the organization. Simi Tierra is one of Canada's most passionate and ambitious business-minded entrepreneurs. Having spent the beginning of her career as a financial advisor, the strong pull to work alongside her family drew her back into her family business. Simi is now the leader of change management and director of sales at Ace-Tronic Industrial Controls, Inc. I would now like to turn it over to Noor to lead today's session. Noor.
Thank you so much, Walter, for that warm introduction. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that we are broadcasting today live from Windsor, Ontario, and I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. Build a Dream would like to acknowledge that we are on land and surrounded by water, originally inhabited by Indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. Build a Dream would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we broadcast from today is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. We are grateful to work, learn, and live in this area. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. So this is the last session of our 3-series Lunch and Learn session, where we began the session 3 weeks ago with looking at how data can help you tell and shape your story when you're looking at diversifying your workforce. More importantly, how can we measure our strategy if we don't even know where we're beginning? The next session talked about how to brand yourself as a company where you are known to be a diverse and inclusive employer, and different strategies that you can adopt to support the diverse applicants and the retention and advancement of diverse employees within your sector. Today, we're going to focus on how to create that inclusive culture and what it's going to take from all of us in order to be able to support and building a more inclusive culture. One of the best parts of leading Build a Dream, to be quite honest, is the opportunity for me to hear stories from women like Kim, Simi, and Rebecca, who share their stories and their feedback on what it's like working in these industries and what advice they have for others who are considering it, who are looking to build strategy, or who are just having a hard time making it all work. So I'm going to go through our formal presentation, and then I'm going to take it over and do a fireside chat where we'll dig a little bit deeper. Oftentimes, what I hear from companies is, well, I tried this and it just didn't work. And so what I'm here to say is it's actually not one try. It's not one strategy. It's an all-encompassing strategy that I'm going to encourage you all to take. And it's not one size that fits all. And more importantly, each part of the pipeline, whether it's the attraction, the retention, or the advancement, needs its own unique strategy in order for us to successfully build a workforce where we all win. So our roadmap for today is explore how to build diverse teams, equitable workplaces, and inclusive products and cultures. Examine ways to integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion into the practices of the organization. And discuss tangible action steps to support and advance diversity, equity, and inclusion within the workplace. I look forward to the discussion I'm going to have with Simi and Kim and Rebecca, because we're going to dive deep into real life examples to help shape what companies are doing right in order to advance and retain women within the industry. The agreements for today is to co-creating an inclusive environment together. Honor multiple perspectives in what's being shared. It sometimes can get very uncomfortable when you're reflecting on the role you played in perhaps not creating this inclusive culture, but I'm here to tell you that let that uncomfortable feeling sink in so that you're able to move forward. And that's what today is all about. It's about the presence and participation of every participant that's here with us today. Appreciative listening. So there are some things that we might highlight that you may not agree with or you may not relate to, but I'm going to ask you to come in with an open mind and leave everything you know out at the door and be open to new ideas and communicate with your values. I think ultimately at the end of the day, we all want to create a world where we all win, where we all feel a sense of belonging. So the first thing I want to ask is, what questions would you most like to explore and answer by the end of the session? So it is a lunch and learn, but time is of value. And I want to make sure that we highlight the questions that are keeping you up at night. So whether you want to put it in the chat or you want to ask at the end, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. So to kick us off, I have some fact or fiction questions to get us in the mindset of what it's going to really take to create this inclusive culture. So this just answer to yourself. Fact or fiction: Canadian people of color, specifically workers who identify as Black, East Asian, and South Asian, experience high levels of emotional tax, putting their overall health at risk and causing them to contemplate quitting. So if you answered fact, you are correct. Fact or fiction: In the mining, manufacturing, or construction sectors, 64% said they hide their sexual orientation from managers and coworkers. This is truly fact. And 1 in 4 women experience harassment, discrimination, or bullying at work within the engineering industry. Sadly, this is still fact. So I want you to look at all these questions and ask yourself, what role do you play in challenging these issues within the workplace and really taking on your leadership to build a more inclusive culture. Inclusive workplace culture starts with each of us. In my introduction, Walter talked about I lead these values in my personal life, in my work life, and in my professional life. And it's very important that we begin with looking at our own internal biases and our own internal values and thoughts and how that shapes how we go into the workplace and how we show up in the workplace and the investment we make in strategy. So according to Catalyst study, managers' behavior has a direct link to an employee's experience of inclusion. In fact, almost half of an employee's experience of inclusion can be explained by managerial inclusive leadership behaviors. So that is the role that leaders play within the workforce. Building a diverse, inclusive, and equitable organization does not happen overnight. It takes comprehensive effort and continuous investment over time. To be quite candid, I started this journey 10 years ago when I worked at a women's organization, getting women off of social assistance and into the workforce. And it started with the question of why. Why are women significantly underrepresented in the industry? And what could we do to change that? And that was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, the percentage in certain sectors was 3%. And 10 years later, it's gone up 2%. So it is going to take continuous effort, and it may not happen in our lifetime. But that is where I encourage companies to continuously treat their diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy the same way they treat their bottom line strategy. So you've all heard the business case. Why does diversity and inclusion matter in the workplace? You bring in a variety of different perspectives. There's a lot of diversity in thought, better decision-making, greater creativity and innovation, enhanced problem solving, reduced employee turnover, higher employee engagement, increased profits, enhanced company reputation, enhanced hiring practice and outcomes, and taking a stand as a company. And we saw that during the last year with the climate within the political climate within companies who quite honestly were forced, not by choice, but were forced to really speak out against discrimination within the workplace. So we know that there is a strong business case for creating a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environment. But why are we still not there yet? What needs to happen beyond the business case? So we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we really want to focus on belonging. So how I may feel a sense of belonging in the workplace may differ from my employee that works in the cubicle next to me. My lived experiences, my background, everything that I bring to the organization shapes how I feel a sense of belonging. So I want you to ask yourself, and it's interesting because I often ask individuals, what does inclusion even mean to you? How does it feel? And what are the conditions that make an organization inclusive? And I think it's very important. And an example that I'd like to give, imagine you're at a restaurant, something we could all relate to, and you're looking at the menu and you see nothing that you're able to eat, whether because of dietary restrictions, religious reasons, and you ask the waiter, can they accommodate some of your meal? And the waiter says no. How does that feel in that moment? Now translate that to an everyday experience in the workplace. This particular slide is probably the most important slide that I want everyone to walk out with today. The climate versus the culture. Climate is local, so and I see this often, and it's great when companies want to make a strong effort to create diversity and equity within their workplace, but then they just post pictures on their website. So that's what you see on the surface. It can vary by location and can be influenced by the manager. So it's that checklist that they check off, and we've all seen it before, where you work at a company and from the surface, they look like they're a diverse, equitable, and inclusive employer. But then when you look at the culture, which is the global, why it feels the way it feels, the shared collective norms, values, and beliefs, those are influenced by leaders and founders. And that's how people feel when they leave their workplace, or how they feel when they're in the workplace. So climate is the surface, culture is within. So visible versus the invisible. So culture that can be seen at the service level. And we saw that in the last year. It was interesting to see a lot of companies immediately respond. They were very reactive to the climate around the conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many at the time did not even have the numbers to really showcase or highlight what needed to be done. They said that it was important to them, but that was the surface. That was what visible. The invisible is the deeper values and shared understanding held by the organization and its members. It's the expressed values and unconscious feelings. It's that sense of belonging. So, for example, let's take that scenario I gave of being at a restaurant. Well, imagine you have a lunch and learn at your workplace. And every time there's a lunch and learn, there's a particular dietary um, option that does not reflect your religious views. So whether it's kosher, for example, and they never have a non-kosher item, that does not create a sense of inclusion. It does not create a sense of belonging, and it does not create a sense of feeling like you are being heard or that you belong within that company. So how could you deliver on that promise? How can companies really showcase their efforts in committing to diversity, equity, and inclusion? You recruit for diversity, which means that and this is something that we addressed in the last session. If we keep doing things the same way, we're going to keep getting the same results. Individuals are not just going to magically appear at our doorsteps. We need to have intentional and dedicated effort in attracting those from diverse backgrounds that are not reflective within our environment. So, for example, the best scenario I can give is companies have great referral programs. They ask their employees if they refer someone and they're successful, they get a bonus. But if everyone that is on the shop floor looks the same, then they're naturally going to refer someone that looks like them. It's human nature. We're all guilty of that. That is not going beyond your traditional approach to commit to recruiting for diversity. How would that look? Well, if you went to particular community organizations that focus on a diverse population, whether it's partnering with a women's organization or partnering with a Black community organization that supports getting Black youth into the workforce, that is what we mean by dedicated efforts in recruiting for diversity. At the beginning, it may feel uncomfortable, and at the beginning, it may seem like a lot more work, but in time, it becomes part of the process, part of your approach that you naturally take because you're expanding your network and you're expanding your audience of who you're trying to attract. Accelerate equity. Employees see themselves reflected at all levels and have the resources and tools to succeed. What does that mean? Our key statement for Build a Dream is you can't be what you can't see. And I can't emphasize enough how many times we hear from young women and even their parents that it wasn't until they saw women in these fields that they even thought that it was a possibility for them. It isn't even until you see a woman in leadership that you see yourself moving into that position. And so having that visibility is so key to someone feeling that they can get there, that they can be there. I always, laugh internally, not because, and I laugh at it feeling uncomfortable because I go on websites for companies and they have the cover page is all diverse employees. And then I always make it a point to look at their leadership team and their board of directors, because that's really what's going to tell me what type of strategy they have within diversity, equity, and inclusion. And 9 times out of 10, and I don't know why I'm still surprised, it's majority white men, especially in the sectors that we work within. So the question is, what effort are you making to recruit diverse women into your company? And what professional development plan are you creating with these individuals to ensure that you're retaining them, but they're also moving along that pipeline and into leadership roles? Foster inclusive teams and workplace culture. You establish policies, practices, and protocols so that people can bring their authentic selves to work and feel a sense of belonging so they can excel. This leads to greater retention. What do I mean by that? Last week, Jonathan, as a party, who is the president of Laval, shared an example of when he started recruiting more women into his workplace. And he panicked because he thought he had to create a woman or mom friendly policy. And in conversation with him about 7 years ago, we joke about it now, but I said, John, it's not a women-friendly policy. It's a family-friendly policy. It's not only the working moms that are going to have to drop off their children at daycare, it's working parents. And I can't tell you how many times I get on the phone at 8:30 with fathers who are about to drop off their kids to school. So this is what is meant by having policies and practice and protocols. It's going to really shape how your employees feel they belong at work. If a mom, for example, a single mother is struggling every day to make it to work in time, that stress, that's the emotional tax that I mentioned at the beginning, that is really that diverse employees bear. It is our responsibility as employers not to negatively impact our employees just based on the gender, race, or demographic. And then design inclusive products and services. This is something that our organization values extremely. We make it a strong effort to not only purchase our products or services from women-owned companies, but we try our best to also purchase services and products from BIPOC entrepreneurs. It's really important to ensure that at all areas of our organization, we are practicing what we preach. So the level of belonging is very important. And this is something that Walter has, so I'm more than happy to share it because I am going through it quite quickly just to give time for the fireside chat. Just want to make sure of the time. It's important to see where I want to highlight the high value and uniqueness is when you get to the high belongingness in the inclusion. So individual is treated as an insider and also allowed, encouraged to retain uniqueness within their work group. That means you're allowing your employee to bring their authentic self. It's not punitive to leave work at 4 because you have to go pick up your kids from daycare. It's not looked like you're not working hard enough. You're not penalized for bringing all that you are to the job site. And that is very, very key in addressing the underrepresentation of women in manufacturing, especially since it's traditionally been a male-dominated industry. So I'm going to skip over this because it is almost 12:30, and I really want to make time for the fireside chat. But what I'm going to encourage you to do is ask, listen, and respond. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to be very uncomfortable. You're going to hear feedback that is going to make you feel a little bit of guilt, potentially shame. I can tell you that's something I experience as I reflect as well. I always look at diversity, equity, inclusion as a lifelong journey. There's a lot of things I still don't know as a leader that I'm open to learning. There are things that continuously change, and I believe as part of our leadership role is to take on that responsibility and take on that life learning journey. It's important to look at intersectional lens to inform changes. An intersectional lens means that every opportunity you have to listen to your employees, it's going to come from different lenses, different lived experiences, different backgrounds. What are you doing as an organization to apply and to show your employees that you're listening? Okay, I'm just gonna quick over this. Okay, so I want to go to the fireside chat because this is my favorite part, and I honestly take my role as the president of this organization as a huge honor and a privilege to be able to share the authentic stories of women, incredible women in the industry that I meet. And today I'm really excited to have this fireside chat with Kim and Simi Tiara from Astronic, and then Rebecca Shenya from Pernod Ricard. Everyone's going to share a unique perspective of what it means to not only retain women within the industry, but what it's going to take to advance women within the industry. And by hearing their stories, you're going to see how each individual has a unique story that shapes the work that still needs to be done in order to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion within the workplace. So I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over back to Walter. So we're going to begin with Simi and Kim, who are going to share a little bit about their company, Astronic. And then once they're done sharing about their company and who they are, then I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Shenya, and then we'll start our fireside chat. Go ahead, Simi and Kim.
Oh, So as Noor and Walter mentioned, Kim and I are both from Acetronic. Kim is the president and I am director of sales and leader of change management. Next slide, please. So just a quick history. I'm going to go over the slides rather quickly so we can get to our chat, but the company was founded in 1983 by Kim's father, my grandfather, when he immigrated over from England. Between the years of 1995 and 2000, we were able to acquire some distribution lines. The origins of the company started just on the servicing side of electrical components in the plastics industry. And then the evolution came through customers requesting that we were able to source other additional products for them to support them in their business. In 2008, Kim bought the company out from her father. Not a good time. It was prior to the big collapse in October of 2008. However, as you can see from the timeline, she did a fantastic job in growing the company from 2008 to present day. Slide's a little bit old, so it's missing a couple of years, especially COVID on there. But between 2008 to present day, we acquired additional product lines to help with distribution, and our manufacturing business expanded. We've also done some R&D on some of the items that we manufacture, and we've really exposed ourselves to new markets. So we're exporting internationally, small scale right now. We've also increased our business in the US. So that's a little bit about our company journey. Next slide, please, Walter. So our company is unique in that we've got 3 separate sectors. We distribute, as I mentioned, and we manufacture as well, which is something we're very proud of because we're able to say that we're manufacturing in Canada, Ontario especially. So we're really proud of that. And also still we are servicing industry equipment. And in the last couple of years, our servicing sector of the business has done very well, just because of the slow times for the last couple of years. Capital equipment has been put on hold, and so many companies have opted to repair equipment that they may have thrown away. So that's actually created a bigger opportunity for us moving forward. That's part of our strategy for the next couple of years. And again, so in order to support production, the top left box just gives you an idea of what we're supplying. Distribution as well as manufactured items are listed there. For what we manufacture in the right-hand top box, that gives you kind of an idea of what we're supplying. Bottom left, so we supply predominantly to the mold making industry, and with the mold making industry, there are tools. And so the bottom box goes over some of the products that we sell there. And then in terms of quality, we are certified because we have a lab on site. So we're able to do calibrations. We're also able to service equipment. So much of our equipment that goes out the door is checked and tested and stickered before it goes. And this is just an overview of some of the companies that we are currently doing business with. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, thanks, Simi. I appreciate you kind of giving us a debrief on Acetronic and the wonderful company that you have. And it's so great to hear that you've been busy. So prior to us going live, last week you and I had a pretty intense conversation about both your role and your mom's role being in the manufacturing sector and what it's like, you know, from your lens in not only being a woman in the sector, but attracting more women into the sector. Where would you like to start?
Want to start? Okay. Yeah, Walter or Noor. So, you know, it's I would say manufacturing in general is a difficult industry to get women into. There aren't too many out there, so attracting them makes it that much more difficult. But
I think given my experience over the past to 25 years now, and having shared that with Simi, kind of helped her to see the opportunities that lay here for our company within the manufacturing sector. And you know, obviously there were challenges, but there was also a great deal of satisfaction that comes from being able to provide those services, especially being a woman and being able to meet that need that's out there in the manufacturing industry. So, you know, along with that, putting in place policies here at work that were able to attract women as well was very advantageous for us.
So, Kim, I could certainly relate because I share the journey that my mom took selling motor oil and starting her own company. And her customer base originally, when she would first knock on their door, would joke and say that she was selling olive oil as opposed to motor oil. And what does a woman know about cars? Do you find that still within your manufacturing sector as the president of your company? Do you hear comments like that?
I've had a very similar experience to that, talking to somebody, and they didn't think that I'd be selling plastic related components, but that I was selling fashion accessories that were made out of plastics. They didn't think that I was supplying the manufacturers that were supplying producing the parts, but I was actually selling the finished products, belts and jewelry and whatnot that was made out of plastics. And so, yeah, that was one of my most memorable and most enlightening.
Do you see it changing?
Do I see that changing? Absolutely. I mean, you know, there's a shift happening, but it's happening slowly. I mean, I've been here 25 years. I think you gave a statistic where it was 3% when you started, and it's 5%, increased by 2%. So it's happening. I think the work that you're doing and showcasing women that are out there is extremely critical and needed, because you need to show this to the younger generation so that they see it's possible and there are those opportunities that lie out there. So I think with those initiatives that you're doing and other, you know, programs like Women in Manufacturing, and will go a long way in helping to speed that up. But yeah, there is a shift happening, but it's slow.
I appreciate that. And I totally agree that it's just not happening fast enough. If we could just have a magic wand, we'd want it to be at 50%, but that's going to take a very long time. Simi, we talked about at length, because you had a baby about a year ago, and we talked about how as a family-run business, you had implemented a policy or a process to ensure that you could leave for the year and come back to your role and pick up where you left off. And originally in our conversation, you said, you know, you're lucky because it's a family-owned company. So your mom being the president and that being her grandson, she had more of an investment and buy-in to want to make that happen. And then I explained to you, I said, but it shouldn't be luck. It should be the norm. And so what advice do you have to companies that are just wondering where to begin, and how does that shape your experience at Acetronic?
So yes, I am very fortunate working for a family business, but we do have, and so I guess I'm a good example because I'm the second one actually. We did have an employee, a female employee, go on maternity leave, and she was entitled to leave for however long she was gone for. Her job was available for when she came back, and we also transitioned her into another role that suit her schedule because of daycare and what have you. But because I guess I had the opportunity to develop something unique for myself, it's something that we want to do for all of our female employees moving forward. So we do have somebody right now that we've spoken to. Kim spoke to her a couple of weeks ago, and it's being very intentional about understanding that we as women, should we want to have a family, and should we be fortunate enough to get pregnant naturally, we won't go down the route of adoption and those types of things, because that does look different as well. But if we wanted to have a family, if women in our companies want to have families, they have to carry that baby. And it's up to them and their partner too to decide who takes the leave. And that's fine if the husband is able to, or the other partner is able to take the time off. But how is that woman going to step back into her role after she has the child is what we have to be intentional about. And if we speak to our employees well enough in advance and we acknowledge that that's a route that they want to go down in terms of building a family, collaboratively, you're able to put together a plan to make them feel comfortable knowing I can take however much time I need to take off and then step back into a role where there's processes and systems that have been put into place where I can effectively step back into my role and not have missed a beat. Or you design another, so in the example that I'm giving, we've spoken to this employee and shared with her that this is, we value her. She's going to have a family one day. Where does she see herself in a couple of years within our company? Is she looking to advance? Is she looking to step into maybe a management role? And then evolving that job with her over the next couple of years so that she's able to do that. Because I think by grabbing the bulls by the horn, women are different from men. Yes, because women bear children. We have to acknowledge this. Like, this is not new information, but acknowledging it and meeting it head on, I think opens up the door to easier conversations, because now you're not skirting around something that is likely inevitable. You're meeting it head on. And so I think that'll really make your employees much more comfortable knowing that you've acknowledged that they're looking to grow their families, and it's not something they have to even kind of sidestep around. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I'm a woman in business, Mom's a woman in business. Well, I guess all of us except for Walter, sorry Walter, are women in business, and we love to work. But we also want to have a family, and so we have to figure out what that balance looks like, and we have to acknowledge that.
I just love how you say it.
Just because I want to have a kid doesn't mean I don't want to come back to work. I wanted to come back to work. I love my son, but I wanted to come back to work. So I think that's very important to acknowledge. Just kind of meet head on.
I couldn't have said it even better than you, especially in the assumptions that we make about women who will potentially bear children. It's an automatic, and I've heard this before, automatic, she gets married and then the employer thinks, okay, well, she's probably going to have a kid sometime soon. And that is like turnkey. And I remember a year ago, right before COVID, I got a call from a school board saying that there was not an employer that would take on this young woman as an electrical OEAP apprentice. And she said, the one employer that usually takes on an apprenticeship says he refused to take her because he's taken a woman before. And after training her for a couple of years, she got pregnant and had to leave for a year. And he's like, all this training is gone. And it sounds absurd that in 2021, we're having this conversation, but the reality of it is people are having these conversations and making these judgments behind closed doors. And who's paying the price is women in the workforce. And when having to choose between family and work, in most cases, women are going to choose their family, even though that puts them at a financial disadvantage, which then creates more problems. And so when I share about, this is not a women's issue, it's an economic issue, and it's about building communities and the economy. I mean that because, as you mentioned, Sammy, having just had a baby as myself as well, I have 2 kids. We want to go back to work. We want to be, it's not either or, it's a blend of both. And however we make it work with our partner or a single parent, that is our decision. We shouldn't be paying additional tax or burden because of the employer is not prepared for that. So, Rebecca, I want to turn it to you because your story is very, very unique, and it touches a little bit more also on the childcare piece and having to pay the price for a sick child. So for those that are tuning in, Rebecca Shenya is probably one of my most favorite stories of a single mom of 3 who just made it and made it in the industry and has progressed and was the first industrial mechanic millwright, bottle mechanic that was hired by Pernod Ricard here in Walker, here in Windsor, Ontario, in over 150 years. So the first tradeswoman on that shop floor. And she's just full of life and full of great wisdom. And Rebecca, can you share with me a little bit about your journey within this industry and give us that example of the time your child was sick and you had to go pick them up?
Okay. So when I started in the trades, I was kind of at a very, I would say, kind of vulnerable place in my life. I was restarting. I had 3 kids, young kids. My son was 1. I think my daughter was 4 and my other one was 7. So I was in the thick of it with kids, and I knew that I needed like a career. So I started looking around, and I took this pre-apprenticeship industrial millwright program, and I just completely fell in love. I fell in love with it because it was the first time I felt excited about a job and a career. I'd had lots of jobs. I loved that this led to a career which could potentially lead to financial freedom, all these open doors, but also specifically the millwright program because it was transferable skills. Like as a single parent feeling like overwhelmed with taking on life, like I can take what I learned in my career and like if my washer breaks at home, like I can fix it. And it just felt like a very empowering, exciting choice. So I took the pre-apprenticeship program. I fell in love and I had a few job offers, but I specifically chose a job that offered both. A lot of jobs were offering machinist positions, but this one had both industrial mechanic and machinist. So I went into it pretty strong about what I wanted, so much so that my job title was millwright trainee. That's how specific I was. I was like, this is what I want to do. So as time went on there, first I would just like to touch on, I think a lot of women quit in the beginning. Like if you go into the trades and you aren't familiar with that, the culture shock is incredible. There was a lot of crying in the bathroom. But my passion and wanting to make it work just really kind of pushed me through, and my kids, of course. So I continued with it and I ended up getting offered a machinist apprenticeship, which I was grateful for, but I really wanted the millwright apprenticeship. So as time went on and there were a lot of conversations and I was very clear about what I wanted, unfortunately, millwright just wasn't going to happen for me. And I really felt that it wasn't necessarily that women weren't being given opportunities. They were hiring a lot, but it was more like it was pre-decided which opportunities were best, which career path would be better suited. It was very frustrating. I do think that one thing that employers can do that's huge is willingness to have a conversation. And I do feel like every time I had a conversation, my voice was heard. It didn't go exactly the way I wanted always, but I do think I left an impact in that way, that I was always willing to talk about it in a way that was disarming, like, hey, like, let's just have an honest conversation. Like, why don't I get this opportunity? Why isn't this available to me? So insistent, in fact, that it was promised to me after I completed my machinist, I would be able to go back for millwright. And as you can imagine, working full-time, doing school at night, it's a lot. So going back seemed like a little overwhelming at the time. So I pushed through, I got my apprenticeship, and now I'm a Red Seal in my trade. So that feels very empowering. And one of the reasons I was so excited about Pernod Ricard opportunity coming up was that it was the best of both worlds. They were hiring machinists for very much a millwright job. And I finally got kind of the opportunity I wanted when I started out. So it's extremely exciting. The story Nora is referring to is when you're in production settings. So this has a lot to do with what people were talking about how this isn't just a woman's issue, it's a family issue. Just the way we approach production. It is important you arrive on time. It's important there's shift work. All of these are huge struggles on dual income families, single parents, anyone with children. It's something that I definitely think needs to be a shift in perspective about maybe the way business is done. Not sure I have the answers, but definitely like a food for thought. But in a production atmosphere, punctuality is very much watched. And I was in school at night, the 3 kids, and struggling. So I already had a couple lates, not a lot, but a couple. I think 3 was allowed, so I'd had 2. Well, one morning I woke up to projectile vomit, as is the life of a mother. But I worked really hard to make sure I got to work that day. I called them an hour in advance. I was like, listen, I'm going to be late. My daughter's sick. I have to get the other 2 to daycare, and I have to bring my other daughter to my parents, but I will be there probably 15, 20 minutes late. So it all happened without incident. No one said anything to me. But the next day, however, I was pulled into a meeting with HR, and it was a verbal write-up basically for hitting that certain amount of lates. I think it was the 3rd late was the charm. And I just remember being like so upset. Like, did I cry? Yes, I cried. Because just like I worked so hard to show up. Like, to me, I felt like I went above and beyond to get myself there. And I asked them, I'm like, if I had called in sick, which would have been well within my rights, would I be sitting here right now? And they're like, no, like this is for the lates. And I'm like, I just don't even understand how this is possible. So I was upset. And I remember it was my lunch break soon after, and I looked at my phone, and I was newly dating someone at the time, and he texted me, Happy International Women's Day. And I was just like, But again, willingness to have a conversation. I'm the type of person who then went to the plant manager and told them why I didn't feel that that was right or fair. I'd given plenty of notice. I worked really hard to be there. Appreciation goes such a long way, and it was very well received. And but I find like they're just looking at it like this is production. There's 3 lates. We can't give exceptions. There's no flexibility. And while I get the production mindset, I do think that there needs to be some grace. You have employees working so hard to show up for you. It needs to be acknowledged. And one other little thing I think is actions speak much louder than words. So one small thing I saw at one employer was a new addition was being put on. So this is new. And they're building, the washrooms for it. And there's a full men's washroom, and there's a single stall women's washroom. And it's just, when you're kind of struggling to feel like that sense of belonging that was been discussed, it just solidifies it. Like, this is your future you're thinking of. So why isn't there an equal amount of washrooms? And of course, in the main washroom there was, but this was in the back part of the building where more millwrights worked. So just more food for thought, how loud those quiet decisions are, that they're noted. And yeah, especially in the beginning, I think it would have been great to have more female role models on the floor, that you could talk to and turn to. So that's kind of been my journey. And I'm really excited about launching the new part of it with Pernod Ricard at doing, learning a lot and doing more of the job I was looking for when I got started.
Thank you for sharing that, Rebecca. And I remember having that conversation with you when you got placed at your former employer and you saying, I want to be a millwright. And what was the response you got? I think that's very important.
So when I said I wanted to be a millwright there,
Yeah.
it's funny, depends who you talk to. So the HR person who was very involved in my story and was wonderful, love him to death, he knew. I remember the first time my plant manager found out, he's like, oh, this is the first time hearing of this. And he was like, we were going to give you a machinist apprenticeship. Like, obviously I had to interview for it and get it, but like, it was just interesting how that was kind of pre-chosen for me. And I'm quite annoying. So I sat down with people and I talked to everybody, and I was like, listen, if I'm a millwright, I can challenge my machinist. I can have dual tickets. I can do that in 2 years because I already have my first year of my millwright apprenticeship, and I can have both and do both jobs. And in the end, it comes down to one person's decision. So I think that's can be pretty frustrating. But it also was a great path. Like I said, I am annoying. So I've got a lot of different opportunities there, and I grew in my trade and I love it. So career goals can be fluid. Sometimes you got to take the opportunity that's there, and it led me to where I am today. So
Rebecca, I would say you're persistent, not annoying.
Yes, I was going to say, may I say assertively persistent?
Yes. Yes. So, Kim, having been with your company for the last 25 years and you hear Rebecca's journey, what advice do you have for companies? Because this is happening as we speak.
Yeah. There needs to be a shift. I mean, the employment landscape is changing. I mean, there is already a shortage of workers, skilled workers, and workers just in general, dedicated workers, workers that come with a great work ethic. And I think if we don't broaden our lens a little and incorporate women or anybody into any of these roles that are available out there, the industry is hurting itself because I mean, look at Rebecca. She's a shining example of what is out there, if given the opportunity and allowed that space to do what she's so passionate about. And who's going to benefit from that? The company that she's working for. She's working there passionately. She loves what she does. But there needs to be a respect for all of your employees, male or female. I mean, at the end of the day, we need a healthy workforce. We need healthy people. We need that workforce to be bringing up a new generation. So raising these families in good environments. So respecting that our employees have lives outside of work that are as equally important as their jobs. That's very important. The whole work-life balance, it and then you've given employees phones. So as employers, we expect our employees to be reachable at all hours of the day, all days of the week. So it's just recognizing to keep and respecting a work-life balance for everybody, male or female. I think that's really important. So.
Thank you, Kim, for that. And I call it blended. It just blends in, especially when you're trying to make it all work.
Yeah.
I want to say that the reason why I put these two stories together is because when you look at Kim's lens, she's been in this for 25 years, and then she brought her daughter into this field, and now it's a family-run business. But now they're taking their lived experience and applying the best practices and policies to ensure that everyone that they bring into their environment receives the same rights and opportunities. Then you look at someone like Rebecca, who for the last 6 years, 7 years has been very vocal about the path she wanted to take. And despite the challenges, despite the setbacks, she made her goals become a reality. And, Rebecca, and I hope you don't mind that I'm sharing this, but it took a company reaching out to our organization to say, we are dedicated to getting more women. We've never had a woman on the shop floor. Do you have anyone in mind? And at that time, knowing Rebecca, I said, I will bid my career on Rebecca. I just knew that Rebecca would be the most perfect first woman to go on that shop floor. She would set the expectation in such a profound way. So it took companies saying, we're going to go through beyond our traditional norm of recruitment, and we're going to look to organizations that are doing this and working with these environments. But it took someone like Rebecca for the last 6 years and she's very humble. She not only finished her general machinist, she applied for leadership position, she applied for a mentorship position, she supported our organization, and she was also a technician at St. Clair College. So she did everything in her power to build her credibility, her knowledge, her experience to be the best. And I think that is the message, that when we have our limited perspectives and perceptions, we are missing out on the most amazing candidates because we are refusing to change our approach. So with that, I see it's 101. I wish I could do it a little bit longer. It's just not enough time, but I just really want to thank Kim, Simi, and Rebecca for giving us the honor to share your stories with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Walter, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Nor. I think from what we heard today, more companies obviously need to hear this. And I thought it was very profound what you said when you take a look at a company's webpage. You say, well, we have these diversity and equity initiatives, and then you see who's on their executive team and who's in their board of directors. And I think, Rebecca, that's an amazing story. And I wish you continued success as somebody who's worked in the beverage alcohol industry. I know how hard it is and challenging it is, so wish you continued success. And a great Mississauga success story and persistence, Kim and Simi. you know, we'll continue to talk because I am the Advanced Manufacturing Business Integrator for the City of Mississauga, and I want our Mississauga manufacturing companies to be successful on the global stage as well as at home. So I want to thank all of you for sharing your stories. I think this is great. The one final thing I will say is this is the last of our three-part lunch and learn sessions on attraction and recruitment, retention and advancement of women in the workplace. And I thought today was an excellent example of tying all those themes together. And the one thing we will be doing in Q1 of 2022 to our attendees is we will be having a workshop, a design thinking workshop, a full day workshop on that very subject. So you can have more women apply for the available positions that Kim has talked about, that there are many out there in the manufacturing workplace, and that they not only apply, but you'll successfully onboard them, retain them, and help advance them. So with that, I want to thank you, Nor, for moderating and leading these last three sessions. And again, I want to thank our speakers today, Kim Tierra and Simi Tierra from Astronic, and Rebecca Shenya from Pernod Ricard. And I want to wish everybody a good week, and thank you very much for attending again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Walter.